Okay, so like she said, yeah, I'm a cartographer at National Geographic, one of many here today. But hopefully what you get out of this is rethinking what the traditional sense of web mapping is. I think a lot of people come to web mapping and think of it as like a slippy map or an interactive. Hopefully going to give you some tips and tricks as to maybe a different workflow around those sorts of things. So at NatGeo we do a lot. I work on a team that works on a whole swath of projects, things from storytelling and long form, things that are timely such as news, more inspirational stuff in the travel space, expeditions and things of that nature to get the message out to our users. Informative, that's sort of the magazine's path, supplements and things of that nature. And then also the navigational and planning purposes of trail maps, adventure documents and things like that. So there's a lot of different, I guess you could call departments at NatGeo, and we have the fortunate opportunity to sort of work across many, supplying maps for the whole swath that you see here, like travel. Books, we do a lot of kids stuff, like kids atlases, and then expeditions to sort of show where those things go. Inspiration in the forms of, what's in Norway and what can you go and experience. Fundraising and grants to sort of show our stakeholders where our grants and things of that nature are actually going. So what I'm starting to really understand is that the cartographer's job is no longer just to simply create a map, right? The director's no longer coming to you and say, hey, just make this map, right? You're actually informing, you're teaching, you're influencing and directing how best to bring that map to the world. I've more times than not walked into meetings with teams that have no cartographic sense of what's going on. We're all cartographers in this house right now, so we think we know what we're doing and things of that nature, but a lot of people don't know what's possible on the web, right? You're working with teams that don't necessarily know how best to implement a map, how best to distribute a map, or even in the small case of putting it on the web, how do you put that map on the web, and like what sort of map should we use for this specific purpose? So I think most of us on our team are coming to this realization that you're sort of showing non-cartographic teams what is actually possible. You're showing them mock-ups, you're showing them product pitches, things that you can make and not something that someone's telling you to make, and then you're sort of underserving the actual goal of the project, right? So I tend to ask a very specific set of questions before the project even gets going, better now than later, right? So you go to them and you just ask, what's your audience? How old are they? Where do they operate? Where do they live? Who are we trying to communicate to? And then what kind of platforms are they on? This gives you a really good opportunity to sort of work across teams, your analytics teams, your marketing teams. Go talk to them, understand who your message is trying to get out to, how they're consuming that content, because that's going to really influence the type of product that you're going to make for them in the end. Better now than when it's actually out there not being utilized in the capacity that you want it to be. And how much time do we want to anticipate spending on that content? How much are your users engaged with that sort of thing? I say users, but I don't like to take the users out of the context of us. We are users, right? I am sort of like the generation is that our attention span is not as high as it used to be. So people aren't engaging with content as much as you want them to be, right? You can't just oversee that, right? You can't build a product that you think is really cool and someone should spend 10 minutes on because they're not going to, right? So sort of taking a step back and understanding that maybe they have 30 seconds on it, or maybe they have a minute on it, and really designing for that amount of time. And how are they consuming your message, right? Are they printing it out? Are they seeing a PDF of it? Are they basically only viewing it on an iPhone, right? We all make maps that have an extreme amount of content on them, and now we're being forced to basically put those onto the size of a playing card, right? It's a little hard to do. So basically there should be tools and tool sets around that, and that's what at National Geographic we've come to realize as, there's ways around dealing with some of the problems with the digital age, right? And then what are the geographic components to the story? Are there numerical values that are spatially distributed? Are there place names that you should be taking into consideration? what geographic components can you rip out of that, and then, deliver the best available product that you can, right? And then even taking the more drastic approach, is a map the best solution? Us as cartographers, we would hope so. But sometimes, a map's not the best option, and you being the cartographer should be the one to answer that, right? You saying yes and you saying no is just as purposeful to the project as anything else. So I made this really cool chart. Basically, project trajectory, right? Not every project has unlimited time and an unlimited budget, right? That's sort of like going to the moon. You have all of the resources at your will. More of like real life is down in the other corner. You have less time and less budget, and I think anyone can attest that we are now faced with doing more with less. Everyone's like, oh, pump out the next project as quick as you can and have it be as best as, things that we've done in the past. So speaking to like the real life situation and end of the spectrum. So what we've done is sort of mended the print and digital strategy to sort of span a huge range of offerings while allowing for project identity. And this incorporates new tools, mixing tools together, which I'll get to in a second, and adapting for screen size. Like, meet the person that's viewing your content where they're going to view it. Don't distribute something to them that they're not even anticipating to get. Like, don't give them a PDF if they're looking at a phone, right? Give them something that they will anticipate getting. And understanding what really helps drive home the message while removing and simplifying for user experience, right? And then I walk into meetings a lot, and you get maybe top down, bottom up. They're like, we really need a web map for this. This is the best solution. And I often ask, what does a web map mean to you? And I get some very interesting responses. Some think it's interactive. Some think it's like clickable layers, an experience. It's embeddable. And I've even got the response, we want something that will blow minds, right? What does that mean? Like, tell me in like actual physical mapping sense, what does that mean, right? I have to build it. So I like to redefine what a web map is whatever best serves the purpose of your project that just happens to be on the web, okay? Maybe it's distributing a static PNG. Maybe it's just anticipating what device they're gonna be on. Things of this nature before the project's actually rolling out the door. So what we've done is actually utilize a tool from the New York Times called AI to HTML. I'm not gonna get too much into the weeds of it, but what it does is takes an HTML script from Illustrator. You can run it and it'll strip out the text that's on top of your artboard, rasterize your artboard, and anything that's not a curved type, it'll actually just turn that into CSS. So what they're seeing on the web is, in essence, HTML embedded into your respective CMS. You can sort of modify it to your own liking. We at National Geographic have our own font sets that we've incorporated. And then also, again, like I said, taking into account the size of the screen that the person's going to view it on. So AI to HTML does really good at allowing you to serve 3 different audiences, which is what you see here. This is a desktop version, iPad version, and a mobile iPhone version. And you can see as the things get smaller, the content changes, okay? Just because you have a desktop version doesn't mean you should squeeze it and distribute it in the same capacity on a phone. Maybe the message is simplified, the place names are taken off, but the overall message is still underlying the overall story that it's incorporating. Here's another example of incorporating 3 different desktop, iPad, and mobile versions. Really taking into account that mobile is vertical, right? So you can basically have it as high and low as you want. And then really stripping down the information to meet the user where their device is. This is a really cool example that my coworker Andrew has worked on. This is the desktop version, and then really drastically changing things for the iPad version, changing the projection, maybe rotating it, and just doing these things that you might not think, people would understand, but you need to change how you're delivering these things to people. So yes, they get the spatial understanding. Yes, they still get the geographic understanding behind the story. And then even our coworker Riley has gone ahead and, maybe you don't need a desktop version. right? Maybe this is going out tomorrow, and you need this done in 3 hours, right? You design for what we have come to realize is a lot of our users consume our content on mobile devices. So he's designed for a mobile device right off the bat, right? And based on time, I mean, he made a great map, and it's probably going to be the most consumed version of this story. And let's say you do shoot for the moon, right? There are those special projects that you have a really cool budget and allows you to do a lot of R&D work. This is a project that Rosemary and I had worked on with the travel department, and it was sort of rethinking what this could do for travel and the money and stakeholders behind it. When you start to get into assets and photos and maps and content, it gets really heavy, right? And the user's now coming to your phone and expecting it to load in like less than 10 seconds. That's a lot of stuff to load in 10 seconds, right? So stripping back that detail, this is actually a screen that they're coming up with their next direction, and things are loading in the background. So it's a false loading screen, and they just don't know it. And then really getting the map to shine, right? Some of these things that you see out there have content that you click on covers the map, and then what is the purpose of the map in the first place that you just spent all of your hard-earned time creating. So stripping back that, getting down to less text, the whole Twitter concept of, people only want 140 characters. I mean, don't fight that, just give it to them. And if they want more, they have the ability to go check it out. And then a completely different experience for mobile. So we didn't try to allow them to sort of pan and zoom on a phone. I mean, even as a cartographer myself, I get super frustrated panning and zooming on a phone, right? Not to mention clicking and finding content. So what we did for mobile is basically just allow them to search the content as content itself, and if they want the map, we give them a small static understanding of where that content exists. And then just some other things that maybe you do have to create a Slippy map, and maybe that's the best solution that you've figured out. So things to consider if you're doing the Slippy map route is lock scrolling on mobile. If you scroll on a mobile device with a Slippy map without locked scrolling, you're going to scroll the map, and you're forever going to be stuck scrolling probably to Antarctica. So things to think about in that, and then maybe adding a button to pan and zoom. If they want to check out the map, don't force them to check out things that they don't want to see. So things that we have taken into account, and just some really cool notes to sort of take away is that don't assume people will find what you expect them to. Complex UIs often bury your content. Don't write off print strategies. Print strategies as dead. I mean, they got us to where we are. Sort of modify and move forward with those things and mix and match different tools. And then deep dive into your company. I mean, go see who your users are, where they're downloading things, how they're consuming your content, especially your cartographic content, because it's your job to deliver it to the person and for them to understand it. So that's it. If you have questions, let me know. If you want to go for a hike this weekend, let me know. But yeah, if you have questions, totally down.
Questions? Hi, I'm Robin. I'm a cartographer at Uber. This is a great talk. Thank you so much. I'm wondering, at the end you kind of mentioned it, but I'm wondering if you ever get a chance to talk with your users, and if so, what that looks like, or if not, do you have any plans to do so?
I think you bring up a really good point that's called user testing. I think a lot of us work in a box. We work in an office that sort of doesn't allow us to interact with users, but we are our own users. Maybe we're just a little blind to it. But yeah, take your product out to the local park. I mean, seriously, if people aren't using it the way it should be, you shouldn't have to tell them to like, oh, click that button or click this button, because you can't be by their side all the time. You're not sold with the product, right? So I think, yes, putting it into the hands of people is a very good insight, and it's a reality check, right? It's like, if what you've designed isn't working in the hands of 10 people, maybe you should rethink what you're designing, right? I think it's a really, really good thing to do. I think everybody should do it, whether it's for print or for digital. Anyone else have questions? Awesome. Thanks so
Okay,
much.
thanks, John.